Bonjour, chers administrateurs. My name is France Bourassa, and I'm a French immersion elementary school teacher for the Lester B. Pearson School Board in the Montreal area. I'd like to summarize for you here a podcast that I've recorded for ACPI. Créer la culture de l'oral is an 18-minute episode that talks about the cornerstones of the learning environment I've been lucky enough to create with my students every year for over 25 years. In my grade 1 French immersion classroom, I believe that building classroom community, strengthening oral skills, and establishing a clear routine for students to feel safe and confident to take risks are fundamental. By first establishing strong relationships with my students and their families, then giving them the words and sentences they need to thrive in their second language, and finally creating a familiar structure and environment in which they feel safe, I provide my students with the necessary tools and strategies to be successful second language learners. But what does that look like, and how do you go about doing this in a language with which they are not yet familiar? As an administrator, what is your role in supporting the context for this to happen? In my experience, learning a new language involves taking a lot of risks. The risk of not being understood, the risk of making a mistake, the risk of not fitting in. The idea of creating a community thus stems from needing a space where my students will feel safe and supported in their attempts at navigating and understanding subject matter in a second language. In order to achieve this, I must build trust. Trust in me, trust in their peers, and trust in themselves. Every year, I set a culture of high expectations for my students. I make sure they understand these expectations, that they are within their reach, and that I will give them the tools they need to achieve these goals. I do this by making our goals clear and by getting to know them as individuals. We spend a lot of time discussing our likes, dislikes, and sharing stories. We learn about the importance of listening to others express themselves. I choose children's literature that they can identify with to inspire them to talk and share their ideas. All this oral communication allows me to informally assess their language skills to be able to adjust my approach for every student. I can then encourage each student to perform at their individual ability level and embed strategies for growth. This can only be achieved if there is trust. My community also benefits from building strong relationships with my students' parents. My door is always open for them within the work hours when I'm not with my students, and I keep a positive problem-solving outlook with them so we can work together. A healthy partnership between school, student, parents provides a solid framework for success. Finally, my students learn language learning strategies for when there is a break of understanding, how to be aware that when this happens, and what to do or say if this happens. We also talk about what it's like to learn a language and what it means to learn in this new language. I explain why it's important for them to speak French to each other as often as they can. My expectation is to hear French in class all the time, with me and amongst themselves, unless they're using one of the strategies I teach them to use if they don't yet know the vocabulary in French. I make sure they understand why I only want to hear French, and that with this practice it will quickly get easier. And it does. It's important not to underestimate how much and how quickly they will learn, just as it is important for them to understand that all languages are valued, but French needs to be practiced. I work hard at establishing these cornerstones for the whole month of September. Once the students know what is expected of them, the rest of the school year is a breeze. One of the clear signs I've achieved my goals is when my students start fooling around in French. It's amazing to hear, and they're so funny. From here, we continue regularly working on our oral communication skills and building vocabulary, as it is essential to establish strong reading skills. There's little use to learning how to read if you don't understand what you're reading. Again, this highlights why it is crucial for students to be speaking French to one another. They need that practice. Getting students to communicate with each other in their second language can be very difficult, so it is essential to get that momentum going and to keep it going once it starts. Finally, establishing a routine that evolves with their language capabilities gives my students confidence and allows me to guide them to become autonomous learners. Regular collaborative tasks allows for co-construction of knowledge, giving the struggling students the likely boost they need to understand concepts they might not have acquired on their own. It is so rewarding to not only hear them negotiate content matter, but to see them help each other find the right words to express their understanding. In my opinion, second language classes have a very different energy than regular classes. Can't really explain it. Maybe it's just the result of building a strong community of learners who inter-rely on each other. So what is your role here? For all this to occur, the right orchestration of resources, support, and trust from my administrators are necessary. I still rely on my school principal to help write certain emails or plan calls to parents. He is an ally who helps me build a positive relationship with the parents every year. He listens to me and troubleshoots ideas when I get stuck. I regularly touch base with my principal, and I have more than 25 years of experience. What can you do to support the retention of French immersion educators? Be clear about what the classroom should look like, sound like, and feel like, as well as what your expectations are. You should be seeing children working together and interacting, hearing them speak in French. The classroom should be linguistically rich, and the students should have at their disposal the tools to help them communicate increasingly accurately. Your teachers should be building strong relationships with their students and their families. But just as the teachers work on their community, you need to work on yours. You need to help build a tight-knit network of language teachers and professionals who support each other, cultivating collaboration and ensuring safety nets are in place for them. It doesn't always have to be you doing all this, but there should be a little bit of you in every community under your care. Thank you very much for listening. Please invite teachers and pedagogical consultants to listen to this podcast in its entirety by registering as an ACP member. Do not hesitate to reach out if you'd like more information or would like additional tips on how to build a strong community of language learners and educators. At ACP, we've got your back.